In every age, evil finds a name. It is whispered in the mouths of mad prophets, scribbled in the margins of forgotten scrolls, and buried beneath the charred altars of vanished cities. Some call it chaos, others lawlessness, lust, and corruption. But across continents and centuries, one name rises like smoke from the ashes of every dark age: Belial. Before the fall of man was written in ink, before the first temple bled in fire, there was Belial, the one without a master. To the Hebrew scribes, he was not yet a being, but a condition, worthlessness incarnate, the rot within the human soul. But to the desert mystics, he was a commander of legions, an ancient, black-winged prince of guilt, born from shadow and let loose upon the world by divine design. In time, he would wear many masks. The Roman persecutors knew him as the whisper behind tyrants' eyes. Medieval monks feared him as a demon of courts and kings, granting titles by favor and damning souls through silver tongues. Magicians, trembling in candlelight, summoned him in languages older than Babel, and those who failed were never seen whole again. He spoke through oracles, possessed the flesh, built cults from cities, and when science buried faith, Belial merely changed his name, reappearing in psych wards, haunted homes, and ritual circles cloaked as seances. He never left. This is his story, not as a symbol, not as a myth, but as a presence that has coiled itself around the rise and ruin of human civilization, from the dry bones of ancient Israel to the trembling breath of a girl in the 1970s, from the black ink of grimoires to the blood-slick floors of exorcisms. Belial has remained unchanged, seductive, brilliant, and utterly merciless. This is not a parable, nor an allegory, but history written in fear, and the Prince of Lawlessness is still watching. Belial's name originates from a Hebrew term, Belial, meaning worthlessness or lawlessness, often used in the Hebrew Bible to label wicked or ungodly people. Phrases like sons of Belial appear throughout the Old Testament to denote corrupt, idolatrous, or immoral individuals, rather than a specific entity. For example, the Book of Judges refers to lawless men as sons of Belial, and in 1 Samuel, Eli's corrupt sons are called sons of Belial, usually translated as wicked men. In these early usages, Belial is not a distinct demon, but a personification of moral depravity or rebellion. Notably, a few poetic passages use Belial in a quasi-personified way. Psalms 18:4 speaks of the cords of death and the floods of Belial, often rendered torrents of destruction. And Nahum 1:15 declares that Belial, meaning the wicked one or evil personified, will no longer pass through Judah. Such verses hint at Belial as an embodiment of evil or the underworld, setting the stage for later writers to imagine Belial as an actual demonic being. By the Second Temple time period, roughly 3rd century BCE to 1st century CE, Belial had evolved in Jewish thought form as an abstract concept into a literal supernatural adversary. Is especially evident in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where Belial is explicitly portrayed as a demonic figure. In the War Scroll, Belial appears to be the leader of the forces of darkness opposing God's faithful. One fragment addresses God about Belial. You made Belial for the pit, angel of enmity, and darkness is his domain. His counsel is to bring about wickedness and guilt. All the spirits of his lot are angels of destruction. Here, Belial is depicted as the chief of all evil spirits, the angel of darkness, who commands demons and brings guilt and corruption into the world, essentially casting human history as a cosmic struggle between Belial's sons of darkness and God's sons of light. The community rule scroll even describes humanity as divided into those in the lot of Belial versus those in the lot of God, reflecting a strong dualistic worldview. In these writings, Belial is still called an angel, albeit a fallen, malevolent one, created by God for the purpose of evil, and who will ultimately be condemned to the pit. Early Jewish apocrypha built this idea of Belial as a chief demon. The Damascus document warns of the three nets of Belial: sexual fornication, wealth or greed, and the defilement of the temple, by which Belial ensnares Israel into sin. It foretells an end-time showdown when Belial shall be let loose against Israel before ultimate divine victory. Likewise, the testaments of the 12 patriarchs frequently personify Belial as the source of impurity. In these testaments, the patriarchs exhort their children to follow God's law instead of Belial's influence. One passage prophesies that in the Messianic age, the Messiah will blind Belial and banish the spirits of wickedness. In mainstream Judaism, Belial never became the name of a specific devil in the canonical texts. Rabbinic literature continued to use Belial as a general term for extreme wickedness or lawlessness, in line with its biblical usage. Later rabbis often interpreted sons of Belial simply to mean people without yoke. The Talmud, for instance, glosses Belial as without a yoke or one without rule, reinforcing that it denotes rebellious characters rather than a demon's name. Thus, in the Jewish tradition, Belial remained more of an allegory for an evil mindset than a literal demon. One notable exception outside the rabbinic mainstream is a medieval Jewish text, the Toledot Yeshu, which even uses Belial as a derogatory name for Jesus, punning on the idea of worthlessness. In Christianity, Belial was likewise initially understood as a synonym for Satan or a personification of evil. The New Testament contains Belial's name only once. What accord has Christ with Belial? Paul asks rhetorically in 2 Corinthians 6:15. Here, Belial is used to mean the chief of wickedness opposed to Christ, essentially equating Belial with Satan or a satanic figure. Early Christians took this association and ran with it. 2nd century church writings and later theological commentaries often treat Belial as another name for the devil. For example, Paul's reference led some commentators to identify Belial with the Antichrist spirit. The idea of Belial as Antichrist appears in certain early Christian apocalypses and sermons. Indeed, the Sibylline Oracles uses Belial as a name for a future tyrant or Antichrist figure. In these oracles, Belial is prophesied to come after the Roman Emperor Nero as a great deceiver, showing how Christians absorbed the name into their end times imagination. The martyrdom and ascension of Uzziah equates Belial with Satan. It states that Belial will incite the persecution of Isaiah, calling him the king of this world, who indwells a tyrant. Early on, Belial was not seen as a minor demon, but essentially as the devil himself, or his avatar in Christian thought. As Christian theology developed, Belial did not feature prominently as a distinct character in scripture or liturgy, but the name persisted in literature and commentary as a byword for the devil. For instance, medieval Christian poets and writers would occasionally use Belial to mean Satan or any demonic force. A vivid example comes from John Milton's 17th century epic, Paradise Lost, where Belial is portrayed as one of the fallen angels in Satan's council. Milton describes Belial as the epitome of impurity and sloth, noting that Belial came last, than whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross to love vice for itself. Milton emphasizes that no demon was more depraved or morally worthless than Belial. In Paradise Lost Book 2, Belial gives a persuasive speech counseling the demons to avoid further war with heaven, not out of wisdom, but out of cowardice and laziness. Milton's Belial is graceful and humane in demeanor, yet false and hollow, a smooth-talking tempter who fosters lust, violence, and rot in courts and cities. This literary portrayal through fiction draws on the long-standing tradition that Belial represents the spirit of lawless lust and deception. In some medieval folk plays and sermons, Belial appears as a personified demon of debauchery. An early Latin morality text from 1382, Processus Belial by Jacobus de Teramo, even imagined a courtroom drama between Belial and Jesus, symbolizing the struggle of evil against good in a legal trial setting. In summary, Christian culture absorbed Belial as another name for the devil or a major demon, synonymous with impurity, rebellion, and ruthlessness. Outside of scripture and theological discourse, Belial took on a rich life in occult and demonological lore. Medieval and Renaissance grimoires elevated Belial to one of the mighty demons of hell. In these texts, Belial is no longer just another name for Satan, but a powerful demon prince in his own right. Early evidence of this comes from the Testament of Solomon, where King Solomon magically compels various demons. Belial appears among the demons summoned. One legend even claims that Belial danced before King Solomon when bound by the king's ring. This reflects the developing idea of Belial as a summoned spirit in magical traditions. By the 16th and 17th centuries, Belial was firmly entrenched in the Solomonic grimoires of Europe. Several, including the Lesser Key of Solomon, both list Belial among the infernal hierarchy. According to these grimoires, King Belial is a high-ranking demon who once belonged to the angelic order of virtues. Belial is said to have led astray many lesser spirits, and he fell among the worthier and wiser angels, implying he was exceptionally prestigious before his fall. After being cast down, Belial became a king of hell, deceitful and malevolent. The grimoires give detailed descriptions of his appearance and abilities. Belial often manifests as a beautiful angel riding in a fiery chariot, speaking with a pleasant voice. Despite his fair appearance, he is treacherous. Demonologists warned that Belial lies incessantly unless constrained by magical rites or divine names. When properly compelled, however, he can impart truthful answers and will grant favors to magicians. In the infernal hierarchy, Belial is typically depicted as ruling over a vast number of legions, over 80 to be exact, composed partially of former virtues and angels. His powers in magic are great, and some of his specialities, according to the grimoires, include distributing high titles and offices, giving favor from important persons, and providing familiars or servant spirits to the magician. However, the grimoires also note that offerings or sacrifices must be presented to Belial to make him speak honestly, otherwise he will deceive the conjurer. Magical texts often caution that if Belial is evoked and does not deliver on his promises, he can be punished by recalling the binding chain used by King Solomon, who legendarily imprisoned Belial and other rebel kings in a brass vessel. Indeed, an elaborate legend. Such stories illustrate Belial's craftiness and the lore that grew around his interactions with legendary magicians. Over time, occultists embellished Belial's persona further. The Dictionnaire Infernal describes Belial as one of hell's ambassadors and a demon of unparalleled depravity. Colin de Plancy writes that no demon in hell is more dissolute or crepulous than Belial. He is engrossed in vice for vice's sake, yet outwardly he appears courteous and dignified. This encyclopedia notes that Belial had an infamous reputation for lust and lawlessness. Purportedly, he was adored by the Sidians and had temples in Sodom and other cities of sin. Demonologists of the Renaissance also equated Belial with the demon of arrogance and rebellion. Some traced his name to a supposed meaning as without master, implying that he acknowledges no authority. This meaning was later adopted by satanic and occult groups as well. In the mid-20th century, Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible named Belial as one of the 4 crown princes of hell, representing the element of earth. LaVey emphasizes Belial as the spirit of independence and self-sufficiency, literally without a master, fittingly casting him as a patron of earthly pride and carnal desire. Thus, in the modern occult philosophy, Belial symbolizes the earth, base impulses, and rebellion against authority, often invoked as a source of personal power and autonomy. Across grimoires and centuries of magical lore, Belial's character remains fairly consistent. He is portrayed as a high-ranking, cunning, and corrupt demon who lures with fair promises, but ultimately brings ruin. Ritual magicians have invoked King Belial for everything from political power to sexual favors, reflecting his attributions in lore. Aleister Crowley, in his 1904 edition of Goetia, includes Belial's sigil and notes on his abilities, continuing the tradition of summoning him as a goetic spirit. In summary, the occult tradition sets Belial among the great demons, a fallen angel and deceitful allure, governing dozens of legions, rewarding followers with earthly gifts, yet ever ready to deceive and betray. Belial's fearsome reputation has carried into modern occultism, fiction, and even purported real-world paranormal encounters. Documented demonology cases and exorcisms have occasionally invoked the name of Belial as a possessing or haunting entity. For example, one of the most famous 20th century exorcism cases, that of Anneliese Michel, involved the possessed individual allegedly identifying several indwelling demons by name. Among these was Belial, named alongside Lucifer, Judas, and Nero, as well as others during the exorcism rites, linking this ancient demon much closer than we'd like to the modern day. While skeptics debate the validity of such claims, the case brought Belial's name to public attention as a demon associated with possession phenomena. Modern demonologists and paranormal investigators also report encounters where Belial is identified as the malicious force at work. In one case documented by demonologist John Zaffis, a family haunting in the United States was attributed to a violent demon calling itself Belial. The entity allegedly attacked the household and even displayed preternatural abilities. Zaffis recounted that it was the first case he witnessed where a demon caused a victim to levitate. According to the case reports, the Belial entity was exceptionally hard to exorcise, consistent with lore describing Belial as stubborn and powerful. These sensational accounts, while not verifiable in a scientific sense, show that Belial remains part of the contemporary demonological lexicon, invoked to explain particularly intense or manipulative hauntings. There are also historical legends and anecdotes linking Belial to paranormal experiences. Medieval hagiographies contain tales of holy men battling demons by name, and Belial appears in that genre too. For instance, it is said that Saint Nicholas of Tolentino, a 13th century Catholic saint, was physically assaulted by a demon named Belial, who tried to disrupt his pious work. The saint allegedly drove the demon away through prayer. Such stories reinforce Belial's image as a tangible evil presence that holy individuals might confront. In occult circles, some practitioners have claimed to successfully summon or communicate with Belial in rituals, seeking his aid or bargaining with him for earthly rewards, essentially continuing the grimoire tradition into the present day. Modern occult authors have published guides to invoking Belial, describing hair-raising encounters or tests of will attributed to this demon. While these accounts vary wildly in credibility, they contribute to Belial's ongoing mystique as an active spiritual force in the dark corners of the paranormal world. Folklore and popular culture have also kept Belial's name alive. He is referenced in horror novels, heavy metal music, video games, and films as a powerful demon or devil figure. For example, the Diablo video game franchise, which is one of my personal favorites, includes a demon lord Belial, aptly titled Lord of Lies, which draws directly from the Christian demonological tradition. In some horror literature, Belial is portrayed as a grand adversary, orchestrating cults or corrupting leaders behind the scenes, playing on his ancient reputation as a demon of depravity and chaos. Even outside explicitly religious contexts, the name Belial has an ominous ring that creators use to evoke satanic evil. This modern folklore cements Belial's role as a villain across eras. From ancient scrolls to contemporary storytelling, he endures as a symbol of ultimate treachery and darkness. Across centuries, names fade, temples crumble, languages die, but Belial remains. He has no need for worship, no throne of gold, no altar carved by human hands. His dominion is built in shadows, behind courtroom doors, in whispers of sedition, in the trembling breath of a child who wakes at 3:33 a.m. with eyes fixed on the corner of the room. He does not rage like Lucifer or seduce like Asmodeus. Belial waits. He corrupts slowly, speaking not in fire, but in reason. He is the lawless voice that convinced kings to betray their own blood, the silver tongue in the boardroom, promising unchecked dominion, the unseen hand that bends justice until it breaks. And tonight, somewhere, he is summoned again, not in Latin or Aramaic, but through hunger, power, or desperation. A whisper in a seance, a sigil etched into concrete, a voice in the mind that says, "You need no master, you only need me." Thank you guys so much for your patience with this latest episode. I really and truly appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, leave me a comment, subscribe, and share. If you'd like to further support the channel, consider becoming a channel member by clicking join here on YouTube or by visiting patreon.com/mysteryarchives or by visiting my official store at mysteryarchives.myshopify.com. There you can find my books and a whole lot more. Other than that, guys, I have a long documentary style video planned for you, and it's coming very soon, as well as some more creepypastas over on my fictional stories channel, Cody's Creepies. I wish all of you the best, and consider watching another similar video that will pop up at the end of this one. As always, this has been Cody here at Mystery Archives. Remember to stay safe out there from demons and more, and I'll see you next time. Take care.